many of you were here last Wednesday? Okay, a good amount, which is good, because I'm basically going to do a conversation today of Sabbath again, but I'm going to do Sabbath part 2. I'm going to hopefully talk a little more practically near the end, because I've had more students either email me or talk to our student leaders about last week and about the desire to find rest and stillness and slowness and find that pace of life, but they have no idea how to actually enter a rhythm of Sabbath. And so we want to talk about that today. And I was fascinated of all the conversations we've had over my time at Vanguard. This has been one that has continuously come up, and it seemed to be one that just sparked so much interest. And I thought, why are we so interested in this? And there's a whole bunch of reasons, and I can't cover all of them, and talked to some about some last week. But one of the things that stood out to me is, part of it is we in the Western church, the Western evangelical church specifically, we're really good at forming the mind. We're really good at telling people what to believe, right? And on top of that, so we have doctrines, we have theology, we have creeds, we have these things that shape, and I'm all for good thinking. I'm a big reader. I love processing theology. That's something that's very deeply a part of my spiritual journey. But the one thing that we're really bad at is forming people's rhythms, forming people's desires, right? We build rules. Evangelicalism is really good about what to do and not do, right? We don't fill in the blank. We don't hang out with girls past midnight. We don't, which may not exist anymore. maybe just in the dorms, but there's things that we do that we say, you don't cross this point, right? We create boundaries around the things that we think will prevent us from living. But the thing about that is, those boundaries themselves don't provide us with life. They just tell us when we're getting close to death. And you might know that classifying life as not being dead is a really bad way of saying I'm alive, right? If you were to say, are they living? Well, they're not dead. That's not a thrilling, that's not, if you were to ask, how are you doing? I'm not dead. Maybe in some circumstances, like if you're in this horrible situation, you're in an avalanche, you're climbing Everest, you're some situation, saying I'm not dead is a good thing. That's like, hey, more power to you. But in the normal rhythm of life, if that's your definition of life, that's a really poor one. And the church tends to do that. We're really good at saying, hey, that's death, right? That's destructive, that's painful for you. You may not even realize how painful it is for you for years to come, so let's draw a boundary around it. This is what the Pharisees did with the laws. And so I think that's one of the reasons we're not good at this, because Sabbath is actually an invitation to life. And because of that, we're not very good at it. We're alive. We don't need to be invited into life. We want to know when we're not crossing into death. And so it's something that's really tough for us. But Sabbath is a way into real life. And as one Jewish rabbi actually says, in 6 days, God made creation, but on the 7th day, he gave the world a soul. Sabbath is the first gift given by God to us, right? Adam and Eve were made, and we talked about this last week, and we're given this mandate to do something with the world, and the first thing that we're invited to do is to rest. Here's your goal, here's your commandment, here's the thing that we want you to do. Now just go and go enjoy. And so last week we talked about what that was. I want to talk about a few things real quick with how Sabbath was later understood by Israel before getting into some of the practicals. So let's do that real quick. There are 2 places in Scripture where Sabbath is actually commanded, right? In Exodus 20 and in Deuteronomy 5. And those are the same telling of the 10 Commandments were given to Israel at Sinai. And I'm going to read Exodus 20, and then I'm going to read the change that was made in Deuteronomy 5, which you will catch. And I want to talk a little bit about that change. So this is Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Remember, keeping it holy means consecrated. So it's this image of actually consecrating a bride. It's saying you are betrothed to Sabbath. This is something we talked about last week. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord. On it you shall do no work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor male or female servant, nor animals, nor foreigner residing in your own towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. That's Exodus. You see, he's tying Exodus to the story of creation. He's saying in 6 days God created, and the seventh day God, who existed before creation, made all of creation, even he rested. So if God himself models to us that he rests on the seventh day, why are we so conceited to think that we can do that and we can go without? Because if God is modeling that to us, I know that I can't do what he does, right? That's how they center it in Exodus. Deuteronomy 5, there's a change in it. All of it's the same. And then it says, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. And then it changes right here. For remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. So everything is the same. The commandment for taking a day of rest, a 24-hour period where you do not work, where you rest and retreat and re-engage with the Spirit and re-engage with God who's created a good world. But the reasoning behind it is different. In Exodus, they tell the story of creation. But in Deuteronomy, he tells of the exodus from slavery in Egypt, which is a significant difference. And he actually couches it in saying, you were slaves in Egypt, and I freed you. You labored in sweat of your brow. You labored 7 days a week in Egypt. It's not going to be the same, right? In Egypt, the life of Israel was defined by what it could produce. They made bricks, right? They built monuments to other gods. If you've ever been to Egypt, or you've obviously seen some photos of the Sphinx, the pyramids of Giza, these radical monuments to the Egyptian gods, and they had a slave group of people who had to build it. So on the backs of the Jews, all of these great things were built, and there was no rest. 7 days they labored. They mixed mud and water, and they made bricks, and they built an empire with an oppressor brutalizing them on top of them. And God is saying, I am not like the gods of Egypt. I am not like Pharaoh. I am not going to put my heel on the back of your neck and press you until you can't go anymore. You are not defined by what you produce for me. You are not defined by what you produce for me. And so in Deuteronomy, God is reminding Israel that Yahweh is a king who gives rest. His first gift to us in Genesis is rest. And in Deuteronomy, he says, you will rest on the seventh day to be reminded of my goodness to you. This is where you will find life. Yahweh is a king who gives rest, and he carves out time for us. Now, we do not live in slavery currently, any of us in this room, to a dictator, to a brutal dictator, as Pharaoh or as the Egyptians were. But we do live in slavery to lots of things, and it is almost just as divisive and crazy and painful and life-killing because we don't acknowledge it. We live in a world that is nonstop, that craves our attention. But we are slaves of hurry. And for anyone who's ever read Dallas Willard, you know he speaks of hurry like it is the worst thing for the spiritual life. In fact, when he was asked by John Ortberg, what could I do to find a centeredness with God? What could I do to push myself into a whole new level, a whole new realm of my spiritual faith? And this is what Dallas said. He said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. For hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our world today. He didn't say, read your Bible more. Stop getting drunk, right? Picket and make sure that, the American political system is, brought back to Jesus. He didn't say that. He said, ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your lives. How many of you feel hurried on a daily basis? Wow, that's a low number. I'm really surprised. How many of you really? Raise your hand again. Honestly, the rest of you don't feel hurried, don't feel like you have to jump from one thing to the next, and you have a million things put on your plate every single day. You don't hear that? Well, Sabbath is about delight. Sabbath, as the Jews used to say, Sabbath, we don't keep Sabbath, Sabbath keeps us. Sabbath teaches us, just as in creation, how to speak order into chaos. Sabbath is the speaking of order into the chaos of our daily lives. For 6 days, we toil by the sweat of our brow, and Sabbath day, we rest and remind. So, I want to give us a couple of basic things based on last week and this week on ways that we can actually enter this together. I have to be honest, I'm not speaking from a lot of experience in this because, again, this is a very new journey for me. The last few months have been just the beginning of an introduction into what a full day of rest looks like for me and my family. And it has been a gift when it's happened. And I'm trying my best to learn to rest, and it's very tough. So don't look at me like I have any of this figured out. But I will say a few things. Number one, create a ritual. If you're going to begin to try something new, a new habit, a new rhythm of life, create a ritual. We are not good at rituals. We have rejected the traditionally high church, the Presbyterian, Catholic, Anglican view of faith, and we push against ritual. But rituals are inherently a part of our faith, right? They're inherently part because they honor the fact that we are bodies, right? That our bodies are good. The beginning of every single Sabbath meal in Jewish study or in the Jewish tradition begins with this prayer. Blessed are you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to light the lights of Sabbath. The first prayer of Sabbath reminds us that out of darkness, God speaks light, and Sabbath for us is to be the light of our lives. In the darkness of this world, it is the light, as God speaking new light for us. Judaism is inherently a religion of the physical world. They're not stuck with the Greek understanding of the world with dualism, where matter is evil, my body is evil, at very least it's not very good, and I have to escape it, right? Most of Western Christianity influenced by Greek, the way we think we have to escape our physical bodies because they're evil, they're poor, they're corrupt. Yes, sin is evasive and it goes everywhere and it affects everything that we are, but it is inherently good. And Sabbath reminds us to play, to be at peace with it. So creating a ritual is a way of saying, I'm going to encounter this entire day, my body, I'm going to be present to it, I'm going to be present with creation. Ritual is a good thing. I know a lot of you get tired of me talking about Judaism every time I talk, but why do you always talk about Judaism? Which is kind of a funny question, but Jesus was a Jew, so I think it's important. I love that scene. I don't know why I'm thinking of this. I quote this all the time with my friends, but I love that scene in Meet the Parents where Owen Wilson's meeting Ben Stiller, and he asks him, who's your idol? And Owen Wilson says, I would say Jesus. You know, he's a carpenter, and he goes off and lists it. And then Robert De Niro says, Greg's a Jew. And Owen Wilson goes, oh, so is JC. You're in good company. I love that scene, just like the optimism of Owen Wilson. Total side note, I don't know why I thought about that, but I quote that a lot with my friends. Anyway, Jesus was Jewish. One of the problems with the evangelical church is we have so invested faith in Jesus that we don't actually explore the faith of Jesus. How many of you have ever even heard the idea, the faith of Jesus, that Jesus had a faith? He had beliefs. He had a way of viewing and interpreting the world, right? But we just put faith in him so we don't actually have to believe and experience and live the way he lived. And that's important as Christians, fundamentally, to understand what was his rhythm of life that was so helpful. Your bodies are good. The earth is good. This is the story of creation. But dualism creeps into everything and teaches us that we can't actually be present, but we have to always be looking forward. We have to learn to escape, right? I have to escape my physical world. I have to get past this thing so that I can truly experience the goodness of God. Or so that I can be on a higher level. We want to climb the level of spirituality. But it creeps into everything. It creeps into the way we live. We think that in America, we work 60 or plus hours. We work more than any country in the world. And I know that sounds crazy, but year after year, Americans put more hours in, and I'm talking per person, than any other country in the world. And I know that you think that's crazy, but it's actually, every sociological study for the last 15 years has showed that is true. We have less rest, less vacation, less time together with families, and more work. We think we can work 60 hours a week to put yes, food on the table, but also to put cars in our garage, to put jewelry on our ears, right? Not me, but people who wear jewelry. I don't like jewelry, personally, and it looks weird on me. And to fill our house with material things that really just, all it is just numbing us. It's numbing us from the fact that we hate our lives. I know that sounds strong, but we're numbing ourselves from the reality that we don't like ourselves. We don't like our lives. We don't even like our families at times. So we work more to avoid that, but we fill it with things that we think make us happy. And materialism is it's pervasive, and numbing yourself happens in all sorts of ways. It happens in medication, actually using drugs, using alcohol in ways that are unhealthy, right? I'll make that distinction broadly because alcohol in itself is not wrong or evil. How you use it, how it becomes a crutch, that is wrong, that's pervasive. But we also do it with things like Netflix. This whole idea of binge watching, right? How many of you have a day off and you just binge watch? What can I watch 6 seasons of in a single day? Like, holy cow. I'm saying that because I've done it. One sick day and I can get through like a season or 2 of something, right? It's actually funny. I know I'm pushing the edge right here anyway, but last week I preached on Sabbath and talked us through that first time. The next day I got like violently ill. By the time I woke up at 7 a.m. and I was just so sick, throwing up. It was horrible. I hate that experience. I hate stomach flu. But I slept for 22 hours. I basically got up, was really sick. Then I got up at 7 o'clock at night, tried to eat dinner, couldn't pass back out until the next morning. I slept for 22 hours. I'm like, man, is God telling me I actually need to listen to what I'm preaching on right now? Because I just slept more in this night than I do in 3 nights combined. But we numb ourselves. That's who we are. And the craziest thing about it is we think that we can work and press and keep pushing up against because we're always saying, oh, but when I make this much money, I can take more time off. When I retire, I'll like my family. When I can spend this money to do this, we always are thinking in the future. And Sabbath is a reminder to say, actually, if you can't do it now, you probably won't then. Why is it that we think we can take 2 weeks a year going to some beautiful tropical location and we'll be completely refreshed and refueled, right? The idea of the 2-week vacation. We think that is paradise. We think flying somewhere is paradise. And Sabbath teaches us, actually, that's not the case. And just a note on that, my own personal experience, if you don't like being with your family, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, why do you think, or you don't like being with your spouse or your parents or your sister, your brother, or whatever the situation is? Because you've created a life that's so hurried and so busy that you can't have time for them and then there's no relationship there. Why do you think that flying somewhere tropical and beautiful and spending 2 weeks in paradise is actually gonna change anything? I mean, sure, you're gonna have that experience on some level. The first couple days will be so great, and then the normal anxieties come back in. Or you actually have a horrible first 5 days and then you have to go home, by day 8 and you're like, great, I wasted 5 days trying to decompress. We think we can run at this rapid pace and in one day just turn it off, and that is not possible. Our bodies need rhythms. Sabbath is a reminder that that's the case, right? If we can learn to focus each week, we will realize that you don't have to fly somewhere tropical to realize that this world has paradise in it. Sabbath is a reminder that actually paradise is present in every minute, every moment. And if for 24 hours, we can give ourselves to be present to that. Wow, what a changed life that would look like. I'm still rambling and I don't have much time, so I'm sorry. Okay, a couple of very practical things. Shut your phones off. I know that's so hard. You're not that important. You're not. I'm not that important. I think I am sometimes, but I'm not. No one here is that important, right? And that's not to be demeaning, that's to remind you that it was God who created. Where were you when he spoke the whole world into creation? It's gonna be okay without you, Of course he's inviting you into something big, but he's also not gonna trust you with anything significant if he can't even trust you with your own life. He's asking you to trust yourself into God. Use the Sabbath, use rest as a reminder that it's not about you. Shut your phones off. You can't even shut your phones off in chapel for 45 minutes. And I'm not saying that to all of you, but there are people here who cannot get off their phones for 5 minutes. You can't do it when you're on a date. You can't do it when Monday night, there was this incredible artist named Audrey Assad who was singing up here. And I just happened to walk in the back and was just so many phones out, so many people not paying attention. And the people in these front 8 rows were having life-changing moments. I could just see it as they were just doing the ugly worship face as they sat there. And it was yes. And I walked back and it's just people it's like Yahoo News, updating, refresh, Twitter, whatever it is. Social media is great. There's great functions of it, but you need to learn that you don't have to be contactable every single day. Not everyone needs to get a hold of you. You can shut it off. And you do it enough over a couple weeks, people will just stop reaching out to you. Just on that day, they'll learn, hey, this person's not reachable. Shut your phone off. Shut Netflix off. Read a book. Find out what really gives you life outside of your phone, outside of social media. We're so plagued with that. There's all sorts of new anxiety disorders that people are studying about when someone gets a text and has to respond to it. The anxiety just lingers. It's just and it satisfies because it's actually this weird mechanism that you get this dopamine kick every time you send it. Every time you send an email, every time you respond to a text. Oh, I'm good. Oh, okay, great. Oh, crap, I gotta do this again? Oh, and then how many of you actually use the silence feature on your group chats? Oh my gosh, I have so many that are silenced right now. I just can't even get over how, when that's on, how many texts I get in a few minutes. Some of the interns hate that when they need to get a hold of me quickly. I'm just oh, I'm sorry. Trying to learn not to be responding to everything. All right, I know I gotta go quickly. Play. Shut your phones off. Create a rhythm. Learn what play is for you. Learn what enjoyment is for you. Sabbath is about enjoyment. It's about picking up a book. It's about laying in the sand at the beach. It's not just about sitting and checking out on Netflix, right? Find out what that is for you and invite people into it. Observe gratitude, reflect, start the night off. This Friday, I'm gonna do it for the first time in a long time, actually do a Sabbath meal. I'm gonna have a couple come over. We're gonna light candles. We're gonna say the traditional, say it with me, the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody knows that. I don't know if those are actual Jewish words. Some of them are. We're gonna say those prayers together. We're gonna be reminded something about the ritual. I want my daughter, who's almost 2, to crave Friday night dinners with our family for Sabbath. Crave that. It may be the only time in the week where my phone's shut off and I'm solely attentive to her. I want her to crave that. Something happens when you have kids. You realize you want things for them that you don't do for yourself, Some of you are at Vanguard for that reason. Yeah, your parents may not actually believe in anything, or they may not be strong believers. Their lives may not be dedicated to Christ, but they're I want my kid, I want them to be a Christian. I want them to go to a good Christian education. Right? When you have kids, it's totally crazy because you realize, actually, if I want this for her, I have to embody it. I have to model it. I have to slow and be present to her. And then finally, so gratitude. Have a life-giving conversation. Reflect like we did this morning. God, how are you present with me this week? Thank you for the thousands of gifts that I wasn't even aware that you were present with me in. All right, so create a ritual that gives you life, that invites people into it, right? Shut your phone off, become present. Play, learn what you enjoy. Learn how God is a God of play. We make him so serious sometimes, but he is a God inviting us into play. That's why Jesus is so in love with children. He loves children around because they just remind of the simplicity of you just trust me and you're with me and you're present with me. There's nothing else that you want but this moment. And then finally, just commit yourself to doing it. Schedule it, put it on your calendar. Someone asks you to do something, say, hey, actually, I can't do this. Or, hey, I can't do this. Actually, would you want to come take a retreat with me? Let's take a day together. Let's have a 3-meal day. Hashtag 3-meal day. I want that to become a thing at Vanguard. 3-meal day where you just spend 3 meals with someone. It's such a good thing. Someone used it this morning and I got so excited. I guarantee you that if you begin to practice this, your whole outlook on life will change. And another interesting thing happens, actually. You'll find that Sabbath begins to creep into every minute of the rest of your week. It's not just reserved for this palace and time. You realize that the monument of the Jewish tradition is the Sabbath day. Time is sacred. It's holy. God gives it to us and says, do something with it. And the way we spend it is to receive life again and again and again. And we can learn to do that in a 24-hour period. It will creep into everything that we do, every conversation. In Revelation 22, John tells us that in the end of all things, right, when the marriage of heaven and earth, marriage language is so significant in the New Testament especially, but all throughout Scripture. In the marriage of the heaven and the earth, there will be a time when the bride, the church, and the Spirit speak in one voice. Meaning, the way some people interpret this, that the Spirit of God and the people of God have actually become one. And I'm not saying that in some weird, we're becoming God type of thing. But at a point in time, they say together, come. And that is the invitation to all people to come to enjoy a time of rest. Sabbath actually ends the creation story, and it actually is the end of Genesis 22, when all of creation is at rest. When the heaven and earth, when the Spirit breathes, when God is present with us again fully in this world and his reign is over all of the earth, it is a lifetime, an eternity of Sabbath. But eternity speaks a single day right now, and that is the word Sabbath. So let's enjoy it. Father, bless the men and women in this room this morning. I pray that you would give them the gift of Sabbath even today, but this week they would do the hard work of carving out that time to receive life yet again and to be present with you. In your name, amen.
At Vanguard University, your story matters. Where will it take you next? For more information, please visit vanguard.edu.